the collector of souls. On a lonely, moonless night, a weary traveler stumbles upon an ancient mansion where an elegant woman awaits, offering warmth and solace at a price too high to imagine. In the dead of night, a young man named Elias stumbled upon the mansion. The house loomed over him, an enormous structure, its walls nearly black in the dim light of the moon. It seemed out of place in the otherwise deserted countryside, as if it had appeared just for him. Its windows were dark, and only a single flickering candle illuminated a room high in the tallest tower. Elias, shivering from more than just the cold, approached the iron gate. It creaked open as if by unseen hands, and he took that as an invitation. He stepped through the gate, and the moment he did, a chill crept down his spine, like an icy hand pressing between his shoulder blades. He was exhausted, desperate for warmth, and unable to resist the strange pull of the house. As he neared the grand door, it swung open with a slow groan of old wood, revealing a dimly lit foyer that stretched into shadow. There, seated upon a throne-like chair in the center of the room, was the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. She was pale, with hair as black as a raven's wing that fell in elegant waves over her shoulders. Her lips were painted a deep crimson red, and her eyes shimmered in the candlelight with an intensity that both captivated and unnerved him. "Welcome, Elias," she murmured, her voice a velvet whisper that seemed to echo in the silence. He blinked, startled. How? How do you know my name?" A faint smile played on her lips. "I know many things, dear," she replied. "Come closer." Drawn to her like a moth to a flame, he stepped forward, his heart pounding as her eyes held him fast. The closer he got, the more he felt his energy draining, as though every step toward her sapped him of warmth and life. But he couldn't stop. She was mesmerizing, her presence a drug he couldn't refuse. When he reached her, she raised one slender hand and beckoned him to kneel. Without a word, he obeyed, his body moving as if compelled by an unseen force. "My name is Lilith," she whispered, leaning close so that he could feel her breath on his skin. "And this is my court." Elias felt the air shift as she spoke those words. Shadows seemed to gather at the edges of the room, twisting and flickering as if alive. He glanced around, feeling an unease settle deep in his bones. Figures moved just out of sight, pale, ghostly shapes with hollow eyes, whispering to one another in voices too soft to understand. They were dressed in fine clothing, but their skin was gray, translucent, and they seemed to waver, like smoke caught in an invisible breeze. One of them, a woman with sunken cheeks and a tattered gown, locked eyes with him, and her mouth twisted into a pleading grimace. She shook her head slowly, mouthing a single word, "Run." But Elias was frozen, unable to break the hold Lilith had over him. His strength seemed to drain away with every passing moment, leaving him weak and trembling. The ghostly servants moved around him, casting pitiful, mournful glances as they drifted by. Some of them whispered warnings, their voices mingling in an eerie, unintelligible chorus. "Please," he managed, his voice little more than a raspy breath. "Let me go." Lilith's smile grew, and she leaned back in her chair, watching him with a cold amusement. "Why would I let you go, dear Elias?" she asked, her voice like silk wrapping around his mind. "You came to me willingly, and now you belong to my court." At her words, Elias felt something shift within him, a hollow, aching emptiness that spread from his chest to his limbs. He glanced down at his hands, watching in horror as his skin grew pale, almost translucent. Panic gripped him, and he tried to stand, to flee, but his legs buckled beneath him. He collapsed to the floor, gasping for breath as the energy continued to drain from his body. Around him, the ghostly figures gathered, their faces filled with sorrow. Some reached out to touch him, their cold hands pressing against his shoulders, his back, his arms, as if trying to offer comfort. But their touch only made him colder, pulling him further from life, binding him to them. "Do not struggle," Lilith said softly, her eyes glinting with malice. "It is easier that way." Elias looked up at her, desperation in his gaze. Why are you doing this?" She tilted her head, studying him with an expression that was both curious and cruel. "I am eternal, Elias. But eternity is such a lonely thing. I need company, and those who wander into my home, those who seek solace, who are lost or broken, they make such delightful companions." He tried to speak, but the words died on his lips. His body felt heavy, like lead, and he could barely move. The other spirits around him began to murmur, their voices a low, mournful drone that filled his mind. Their faces were etched with centuries of pain, each of them trapped, bound to this place, to her. Lilith watched him with a detached, almost bored expression, and for a moment he saw the truth. She'd done this countless times before. She'd lured souls into her court, draining them of life and binding them to her, only to cast them aside once she grew tired of them. They were nothing more than toys to her, and he was just the newest in a long line of victims. As his vision blurred, he felt himself slipping, his thoughts becoming hazy, distant. He was no longer Elias. He was just another ghostly figure, another whispering voice, another servant bound to her will. He joined the others, drifting through the house, his memories fading, his sense of self slowly dissolving. Lilith sat back in her chair, watching her new servant with a satisfied smile. Her court was filled with souls, each one a testament to her power, to her cruelty. But as always, she knew it wouldn't be enough. One day, she would grow bored of them, and she would need to find more. And so, she waited, shrouded in darkness, her eyes gleaming with the hunger of eternity, as the whispers of her court filled the air, warning the next unfortunate soul who would surely come seeking solace, only to fall into her deadly embrace. Outside, the gate creaked open once more.